I wanted my abortion to be filmed because I feel very strongly about legalized abortion.
Maybe 46% of all American women will have an abortion sometime in their lifetime.
We all talk as if we could get along without abortion, that we have perfect contraception.
You shouldn't have to go to Mexico if your diaphragm happens to break or the condom breaks or whatever.
Why does the government want hungry children in the world?
We want abortion for the sake of our children.
I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they would suffer incredibly.
But abortion is a positive good.
The harsh reality is that a woman will seek an abortion anyway, whether legal or not.
Where will abortions take place? In safe, legal, compassionate surroundings, or in the back alley?
We can try and make it illegal. We can try and turn back the clock, and the women will die. Women will die.
A simple, safe procedure that no one needs to be ashamed of or embarrassed about.
First trimester abortion is one of the safest medical procedures we know. You don't have to die from an abortion, and yet women are throughout the world where it's illegal.
Access to safe abortion services is frequently a matter of a woman's survival.
This abortion was completed in 1 minute, 24 seconds.
To lawmakers, I would like to say, this is hundreds of thousands of women whose lives are being affected. I mean, it's not a political thing, it's not a philosophical thing, it's women's lives.
In 1973, the historic Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade made abortion legal in the United States. From that time until now, a strong majority of Americans have supported that decision, despite massive propaganda efforts by the anti-abortion minority. But even in a democracy, the voice of the majority can be obscured by other forces: power, politics, religion. I'm Christina Pickles. I'm an actor and a mother, and one of the millions of Americans concerned about the fact that abortion rights in America are now in serious jeopardy. We've all heard the hysteria of those who would see these rights taken away, and emotional voices can often distort issues. The voices you are about to hear are rational ones, voices of professionals and experts who have seen firsthand life with legal abortion and life without it. They are the voices of people who understand that for women, their children, and even for our planet, the right to legal, safe abortion is a matter of survival.
Last year we did a study of access to birth control in 115 countries. Abortion is more frequently used as a method of birth control than all but a few methods of contraception. So it's there, it's part of the reality. And to pretend that it can be made to go away is very naive.
One cannot have effective fertility control without abortion as a backup. It's never been accomplished in any society, to my knowledge.
Abortion has existed in every society, regardless of restrictions, since 2500 BC. It is one part of a solution to a universal human need, the need for people to control their family size. Worldwide, there are between 55 and 60 million abortions each year, fewer on the average in developed countries. The United States abortion rate is lower than the world's average.
I think an enlightened community sooner or later is going to realize that abortion fits into reproductive health care. Now, maybe 90% of that is the prescribing of pills, making available diaphragms, making available IUDs. The other 10% has to be abortion.
Research shows that the more contraceptive options available to a society, along with the education necessary to use them, the less that society needs to depend on abortion as a backup. In the United States, we have fewer contraceptive options than other developed nations, at a greater cost. The pill, for example, costs about $330 a year.
Just the search for the right kind of contraceptive, then to be able to buy it, then to be able to continue to go back and get the proper health care that you need in order to keep it going, costs a lot.
But even when birth control is available and affordable, it still can fail. In fact, some commonly used contraceptives have high failure rates. The condom fails 12% of the time, the diaphragm with spermicide 18%, and spermicides alone have a 21% chance of failure. This woman was using the sponge. Carefully, she thought.
We estimate that worldwide, perhaps 30 million unwanted pregnancies result just from contraceptive failure. These are not people who are promiscuous or these are people who are trying to limit their family size and their contraceptives fail them.
Women do have unplanned pregnancies. And when they have unplanned pregnancies and they don't want a baby, they will go do something about it.
Making abortion illegal does not reduce its incidence. In fact, it may increase it. Compare the abortion rates for the United States, where abortion is legal, to that of Brazil, where it is illegal. Brazil, with 58% of the population of the United States, has twice as many abortions.
Before abortion was legalized, there were estimates that there were 200,000 to 1 million illegal abortions performed per year in the United States.
Her name was Eloise, but everybody called her Happy. At the peak of the Depression, with 2 children, no home, and an unemployed husband, she became one of the millions of American women to resort to an illegal abortion and to die from it. Her brother, Jack Logering, remembers what happened.
She'd gone to a back alley abortionist, and she began a hemorrhage. Her husband came home and saw what was happening and called a doctor. Doctor came to the house, pulled back the sheets and looked at what was happening, pulled the sheets back and walked out of the house without touching her.
I think for a majority of certainly younger couples, younger women and men, they don't really understand what it would be like if Roe v. Wade were overturned.
The lesson is very simple. When you legalize abortion, the nation's health improves. If you restrict abortion, the nation's health suffers.
Is it the 1-inch tissue that we are concerned about, or is it the dead woman on the motel floor? And this is the dead woman.
So many people think that coat hangers and so on, they're just sort of a figment of someone's imagination or it's overdone. I've seen many damaged uteri from the use of coat hangers, crochet hooks, unbelievable instruments to attempt to eliminate an unwanted pregnancy.
A look at history reveals that a major force behind the Roe v. Wade decision was the medical establishment. Doctors from every specialty and discipline who recognized the inhumanity of denying women that right and who hold that same position today.
I remember very vividly when I was a third-year medical student down in Nashville, Tennessee.
A third of the patients on our gynecology wards were young and older women suffering the complications of an illegal abortion.
It was around 50 beds, and those beds were always full.
It was 1965 or 1966, a young 17-year-old woman came into the emergency room of Hubbard Hospital.
And her parents came to see her, and they brought a letter that she had written before she went to Tijuana, saying, "This may be the last time you'll hear from me, I don't know."
That she had gone to a backroom alley where she was treated miserably, where she had a catheter inserted.
The catheter had gone through the backside of her uterus and carried all of the bacteria and the toxins, not only into her uterus, but also into the rest of her body.
And despite massive antibiotics, despite the use of various drugs, we watched this very attractive, very bright young teenager go down and finally die. And then her family arrived.
When her parents saw her, she was on the marble slab in the morgue at the county hospital.
And that woman who died didn't care whether it was legal or illegal, and she did not ask a judge or a jury or her minister or her state legislature. She knew that she was pregnant and did not want to be and was willing to take the risk. And she is just representative of thousands and millions of women who were desperate enough to put their lives on the line to do that.
There was a growing feeling among all of us that there really needed to be some change in what was happening, because we were seeing all these poor women and children really in life-threatening situations for no reason.
It's important to understand that by legalizing abortion in the United States, we almost eliminated deaths from illegal abortion, so that by 1979, the federal government could not identify a single woman anywhere in this country who died from illegal abortion.
Today, doctors and public health officials like David Grimes are again working to dispel the barrage of misinformation that the anti-abortion movement continues to spread about the procedure.
The medical evidence concerning the safety of induced abortion in the United States is clear and incontrovertible.
A persistent myth is that abortions usually take place quite late in pregnancy. Actually, 91% of all abortions in this country take place before the 12th week, 8% in the second trimester, and less than 1% in the third, and those exclusively for medical reasons. With the advent of home pregnancy testing, abortions are being performed even earlier. This is the contents of an emptied uterus after an 8-week abortion, before which 50% of all abortions occur. It is clearly not a baby, despite what anti-abortionists say in their propaganda.
The organizations that are supporting the current position on Roe v. Wade and are against changing that status include the American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Public Health Association. Our president, during the debates in the campaign, said he won't put women in jail, but he'll put doctors in jail. I was offended by that statement. We should have all risen up against that statement. We have a duty to provide this service to women, and I defy them to put us in jail in providing this medical service.
The state of Idaho has already passed a resolution outlawing abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Idaho law provides that any woman who has an abortion, even in a case of rape, will receive a mandatory prison sentence of 1 to 5 years, with even stiffer penalties for doctors.
What really frightens me is that the men who will make that decision don't care. Don't care. They will sit in that marble structure in Washington and hand down this decision and won't see the consequences of the women who come through the emergency rooms of a Boston City hospital or a LA County hospital or a charity hospital in New Orleans or Cook County Hospital in Chicago. The most vulnerable, the weakest in our society, poor women, will be the first affected and the most severely affected.
For both rich women and poor women, it was a very traumatic experience to have an illegal abortion. The whole experience was degrading and alienating, even more so for the poor women.
Black women in Georgia died 4 times more frequently from illegal abortion than white women. And black teenagers died 11 times more frequently than their white counterparts.
It's going to affect us. It's going to affect us. And what affects us today affects the rest of the population tomorrow.
But if the skeptics don't believe history, if they don't believe history, all they have to do is look in the third world.
Overseas, as we speak, as many as 200,000 women die each year from botched illegal abortions. This is not only a grim prediction of what could happen here, it's a direct reflection of how our internal debate over abortion has poisoned our foreign policy and cost women all over the developing world their lives.
I don't think Americans realize that women are dying in the third world from clandestine abortion and that they are dying by the thousands, that you cannot go to a hospital in any third world country, in any third world city, and not find the abortion ward, that women are treated as pariahs, that they are bullied, that they are left to die alone.
The United States does not consider abortion an acceptable element of family planning programs.
Mexico City, 1984. At an international population conference, the United States proclaimed it would no longer fund family planning programs in developing nations that provided counseling, information, or referrals about abortions, even if the funds used to provide those services were their own or from other countries. American organizations like the Pathfinder Fund, for example, must require that health providers sign a clause that, in essence, is a denial of the fact that abortion even exists.
For example, if a woman comes to a clinic and it is very obvious that she is pregnant and it's not a wanted pregnancy, In many cases, a health provider doesn't feel like they can even discuss any other possibilities or even say, look, these are the risks of a self-induced abortion.
In some countries where abortion is illegal, some of these groups were even afraid to care for women who were dying from the effects of illegal abortion. They turned these women away from their doors because they were afraid if they had anything to do with them that they might lose their U.S. funding.
And this loss of funding would be tragic. The United States has been providing 40% of the family planning funds for developing nations. Because of its sweeping restrictions, the Mexico City policy has greatly reduced the number of family planning and contraceptive services available to women, who, desperate to control their fertility, continue to resort to illegal abortions and continue to die, one woman every 3 minutes.
Many people say that women in those countries don't want family planning. In Kenyatta National Hospital, a large hospital in Nairobi, 50 women are admitted each day right now for complications of illegal abortion.
There are no doctors where they live to prescribe pills or insert IUDs. They don't have the money to go to the city and into the drugstore and pay maybe $50 for a monthly cycle of pills. Even where there are contraceptives available, they are so expensive compared to the annual income of $150 a year of many poor families in Africa and Asia and Latin America.
Clearly, those women who have gone to all kinds of extremes to get that botched abortion do not want a child, would like to practice family planning, certainly should have access to safe abortion rather than the illegal botched procedures that they now have.
When a woman dies, it's really not just that woman dying. Her whole family is affected. And the future, the life, the care that, her children are likely to get will never again be the same. I mean, it's gone.
For those of us who have been overseas and been to third world countries and seen the hospitals in third world cities and seen the women in the beds and seen their faces and their expressions, and recognize that much of this has to do with U.S. policy. The fact that we as Americans cannot do something about this and are not walking in the streets in indignation, to me, is incredible.
IPAS is doing something about abortion deaths in the developing world. IPAS produces and distributes the Aspiration syringe that can correct botched abortions or perform early abortions under the most primitive of medical conditions.
What our organization sees day in and day out is that women in the developing world are willing to risk their lives not to be pregnant. The equipment is very inexpensive, it's extremely durable, and the question arises, what's the cost of a woman's life, or even a family's life?
An aspiration abortion with the syringe takes only a minute or two, requires no anesthesia, and can be performed without a physician by trained nurses, midwives, or birth attendants. Again, what you're seeing is the contents of the uterus after an early IPAS abortion.
Even with the level of hysteria surrounding the abortion debate in the United States, we have found that there is tremendous support among those who are knowledgeable about issues of reproductive health and family planning in the developing world. People within the government and USAID privately are willing to give us their support, in fact, to encourage us in what we do. They have realized through the restrictions that have been imposed on them that, in fact, you can't ignore the need for abortion services which are safe and accessible in the developing world.
An even greater technological breakthrough has been the invention of RU-486, developed in France. Some have called it the abortion pill.
This pill, if taken at the right time, which is very early, within 2 to 3 weeks of a missed period, will provide the woman with an option of a medical, if you will, a method to end a pregnancy that's not surgical.
I'm hesitant to label any drug a miracle drug, but there are a number of potential uses of RU-486.
Those uses include inducing labor at term delivery, treatment of ulcers, Cushing syndrome, endometriosis, prostate cancer, and breast cancer, which 1 in 10 American women will develop. But pressure from anti-abortion forces threatens the research and use of RU-486 in this country and internationally. The moral majority in a March 1989 press release claimed that the anti-abortion forces had succeeded in blocking the distribution of RU-486, even for its life-saving medical applications.
This drug, RU-486, and that class of drugs may have an impact on breast cancer, may have an impact on prostate cancer. They don't care. They want it off the market because it can be an abortifacient. It's an immoral, almost obscene stance.
The anti-abortion movement has already left its chilling mark on science. Boycott threats and behind-the-scenes lobbying have virtually shut down contraceptive research in this country.
In 1970, there were 13 pharmaceutical companies in contraceptive research. Today, there are 3. 7 of them were in the United States. Today, there's 1.
If we had had this type of political climate 20 years ago, we wouldn't even have the methods that we have available now, and God only knows we don't have enough methods available.
It really is an example of medical McCarthyism in which we see an entire doctrine or school of thought pushing itself on the practice of medicine and science.
I see by your testimony that you were formerly with the CDC. How long ago did you leave there, Dr. Grimes?
I left the CDC in the summer of 1986.
And why did you leave?
During my last few years at CDC, I had 2 scientific manuscripts that were censored by CDC editorial channels. The latter manuscript was an invited article on contraception, invited by the Journal of the American Medical Association. The manuscript was not cleared, and I was advised this was due to the fact that the word abortion was mentioned twice in approximately a 5,000-word manuscript, and because my superiors did not want me writing about contraception.
Is the fight to outlaw abortion also a crusade against birth control? It seems such a contradiction, since reliable contraception decreases the need for abortion. But one look at the literature of anti-abortion groups tells the story. They do want to take away your right to effective contraception. Randall Terry, leader of Operation Rescue. I don't think Christians should use birth control. Judy Brown of the American Life Lobby. We are opposed to all forms of birth control with the exception of natural family planning. Joseph Scheidler, Pro-Life Action League. I think contraception is disgusting, people using each other for pleasure. And they've made inroads overseas, where the United States has poured millions of dollars into natural family planning programs that teach only the Catholic Church-sanctioned method of periodic abstinence.
Through these funds that are being used for natural family planning, they're pulling women off more effective methods of contraception. And these women are then finding themselves pregnant, and they didn't want this. This is an unwanted pregnancy. They were trying to use contraception, and they end up having an abortion.
The Human Life Amendment, which the Reagan and Bush administration publicly support, bans the termination of a pregnancy from the moment of fertilization. If passed, this could outlaw the pill and the IUD.
The anti-abortion movement has clearly attempted to identify the IUD and the pill as an abortifacient in an attempt to get those very effective contraceptive methods off the market.
If one scratches a bit further, one oftentimes discovers that these persons are also opposed to sexuality in general, and sex education in particular. So there's a broader undercurrent that underlies the abortion debate.
They have no right, really, to impose their views on the rest of society, and certainly no right in a country that has a constitutional ban against merger of religion and state to impose the views of one religion on other people.
In what could be termed a rash of domestic terrorism, factions of the anti-abortion minority have turned to tactics of increasing violence and harassment. Here they accost a young woman as she tries to enter a clinic. It's all the police can do to hold them off.
Many of my colleagues have been subjected to this kind of terrorism. One of my colleagues in southern Illinois was kidnapped along with his wife for 9 days and held at gunpoint. Another was accosted at gunpoint in the back of his clinic.
Why are you officers acting like murderers?
There are forces at play in our country today that see that abortion is a handy political weapon. These so-called forces have exercised enormous political control.
I think the Supreme Court's decision in Roe versus Wade was wrong and should be overturned. And I think when it comes to abortion, there's a better way, the way of adoption.
The anti-choice or the no-choice people really don't care about people, and they really don't care about children. The problem is there are not enough white babies to go around.
The realities of adoption are heartbreaking. In the United States, 34,000 children wait to be adopted. 82% of them are older, handicapped, or have special needs. 51% are minority. Those seeking to adopt overwhelmingly request healthy, white babies. An additional 450,000 children wait in state facilities and foster homes after being removed from their parents for abuse or neglect, part of the 2.2 million children who are abused every year.
You know, we have to think very seriously about this. What are the consequences of forcing a woman to have a child that she just doesn't want? Is she going to hate this child?
Another example of the fact that children are not wanted in many instances because women simply can't take care of them are the figures we're seeing from Latin America of the so-called street children. There are estimates that in Brazil there are as many as 11 million abandoned children living in the streets. What better testimony is there to the need for family planning, for abortion services, and for a variety of other services for these women who are so desperate as to abandon their children?
We are living on a planet where the words quality of life have no meaning to billions of people. The World Health Organization estimates that 430 million people do not have enough to eat and suffer from malnutrition. 10 million children under the age of 5 suffer from the most severe form, which is usually fatal if not treated. Can we continue to keep from women in these desperate straits modern fertility control, including safe abortion? Can we tell them they have no right to limit their family size and no right to survival?
Population growth is the common denominator under virtually all of the world's problems. And we've spent 8 years arguing over abortion and arguing over supply-side demographics. And in those 8 years, we've added another 700 million people to the world's population. That's as many people, almost as many people as live in the state of India, which is the world's second largest country. We have wasted time that we didn't have.
Abortion is a necessity for millions of women worldwide, for their health, for their well-being, for their dreams of a better tomorrow. The reality is that a woman will seek an abortion, legal or illegal, almost instinctively and in self-defense. A woman will do this when an unwanted pregnancy presents an excessive strain on her or her family's physical, emotional, or economic resources. Throughout the ages, courageous women have made it their right, and indeed their responsibility. In a civilized society, we owe women the legal right to make this decision safely. It is a matter of survival.
To think that this is something for which we must apologize. We have forgotten that this is a moral right.
I predict that when medical historians of the future look back on the 20th century, the legalization of abortion will stand as one of the real triumphs of our times.
I have a letter dated from my sister on February 14th, 1934, and she writes, Jackie, much of what I have to write is most difficult to express. Is it fair to have children we can't feed properly, can't keep decently warm, or give them medical attention when they become critically ill? Must I keep having children whether we want them or not? Children are so wonderful. I think only those should be born who will have a fair chance at life. I have made some decisions, and that is why I have written all this to you. I ask for your understanding, even though it may take some time for you to accept the need for such a struggle on the part of your special sister and all women in their struggle. To all my love always.
They can legislate some things, but what is in the minds of women and families and people have around controlling their destiny, they cannot legislate. They cannot change.